Again, start recording. So you can start, you can share your screen, Gokhan, right now, and then you can start your lecture. So the flow is yours. I give to you.
Thank you very much again inviting me. I'm very happy to be with you and class today. Now, I would like to use the actual paper. Our main motivation to, in the beginning of the pandemic, our main motivation to study on this specific research question is, there were rumors, especially in newspapers then, about this pandemic will hit the world worse than the bird flu, for example, which is approximately happened 100 years ago, just because globalization increased during this 100 years. Therefore, the spreading of the virus will be quicker they were expecting. And this was a really important question, because if it is so, the spreading pattern or any kind of means to protection will be important for the countries. And one more implication, if it is true, then would it be the end of globalization or some other lived values which have been discussed? For example, is it increased individualism, or is it something connected with democracy? All this spread or some and we can say that globalization is the final result of the work globally, which creates welfare, and at the same time it is connected with the channels of international trade, international tourism, students, migration, all these things which is happening especially during last century. Therefore, international trade is important for us. We like tourism. International student movements also is an important issue in the global world now. And there are also increasing migration. Therefore, this pandemic, searching about this pandemic spreading patterns, case fatality ratios, about the globalization level of the countries, will give us really nice insights about how a pandemic moves in a global world. I should say that globalization is not a very new issue, because in the World War I, when the bird flu happening, again there was some kind of globalization, some level of globalization, and some people also discussing that the globalization level in the bird flu level was not less today. But of course, we should admit that international trade or international tourism, transportation level facilities is not developed just as today in the bird flu pandemic, which has happened 1918 between 1920, the flu pandemic, which called Spanish flu. Of course, there were some other pandemics which happened in which, for example, the famous one is the Black Death, happened in the Middle Ages in Europe. Again, international trade play a role in that pandemic too, because pandemic starts to be registered in Florence, which is a part of Italy now, and hit the Florence very badly. And because of, we know that the Florence is a very important trade city of the current Italy, and it was same back then. Now, of course, before this study, which talk about quarantines and city lockdowns, we don't have a really big pandemic, except HIV pandemic, which is a very different nature, because we know that COVID is transmitted very quickly, and we see the results of the COVID in an individual very quickly. For example, 20 days or 1 month. HIV is a little bit, has a stealth mode which can spread in silence. So there are some studies on HIV pandemic, but this pandemic is much more like the Black Death or a Spanish flu, which happened very quickly. Therefore, globalization may play a little more important role about in this pandemic. Now, first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the methodological approach which we used. Then I would like to talk about the data. First estimation, which we targeted, was the transmission speed. And we define transmission speed by looking at the literature, is the duration to reach a country and times the infection rate. We are multiplicating duration to reach a country, for example, 20 days after the first case from Wuhan, let's say it came to Italy. So the duration to reach a country is 20 here. And the infection rate is current infections when we realize that the diseases in the country, let's say 200 people in the population. So we divide that one to the population. And the other estimation we targeted is the infection rate. That one is the number of COVID-19 cases divided by population size. It differs country to country. And the final one, we try to understand which is it connected with globalization or not, is the case fatality ratio. Sometimes they call it in the literature case fatality rate, which is number of deaths divided by the confirmed case. When we search the data, these are our dependent variables, and our main independent variable is the globalization level of the country, which I will talk about how we find that data a little bit later. Now, first of all, due to nonlinear structure of the data which we search, And because of nonlinear structure, we linearized the data with the natural logarithms for all of the variables, which doesn't have any zeros in it, which we cannot use the natural logarithm transformations for them. We use COVID-19 data from Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Research Center data. Especially these are for these four variables. And after that, now I can talk about the globalization data. The globalization data is provided by Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and the local initials of this institute is KOF, and it provides some different globalization indices. Especially, there are three indices that we can use, which we call de facto, de jure, and overall for all countries all over the world. So when we look at for a certain year globalization indices of a country, we can see in the index number, which gives us the globalization level approximately about that country. But what is the factor de jure and overall? Now, they have three kind of indexes. The jure index concentrate especially on trade regulations, tax regimes, investment restrictions, mainly regulations and laws and tariffs. Therefore, it's about law. These index are about law. De facto is concentrating, especially real tourism, real international students, and real international trades instead of legal matters. Migration, capital movements, and overall the indexes combines the two. Therefore, these three indexes will give us a little bit robustness checks. Now, let me show, sorry, I'll show this. Where did it go? Sorry, wait a minute. Okay. Yes. Now, we have some other control variables, which I will show here. Yes. Sorry about that. Okay, and here. Yes. Let us talk about a little more about the data. Here you see the transmission speed, which I talked about, total number of corona cases over population, multiplication with the day gap. Day gap means first case from the Wuhan and the first case from that specific country. The difference for confirmed case in country. Confirmed cases per capita is another variable, which is total number of corona cases over population. As you see, we obtained these Johns Hopkins University Center Systems and Science and Engineering. Here we have the globalization indices. We have that from this study. We also some control variables. Of course, we need that. The gross domestic product per capita is very important because we have to check that in order to understand the real effect of the globalization level. Democracy is also another important thing, which we have another paper on it, because democracy level can be connected with globalization, and democracy, for example, a little bit less democratic countries can act quickly, and these kind of things happen to discuss. Therefore, we check democracy. Monthly temperature is important because we know now the temperature is affecting the coronavirus spreading. And which is very important, we can guess that more globalized countries at the same time can be more rich countries, and the age 65 and above a share in the population could be more in these countries. Therefore, they can be more affected. Therefore, we have to check that one too. We check the government ideology, which could be, and we thought that which could be an interesting variable, because left or right ideological countries sometimes may act different in the emergencies, which we have some literature about that, about the political economy. Distance to China, especially in this kind of study, is important. So from Google Earth measurements, distance between China and the country's capital was another important thing. Since we were writing this paper in the beginning of coronavirus pandemic, we used one belt, one road rotation countries as a dummy variable, because the trade route could be connected with the coronavirus spread and other aspects of the pandemic. And again, we use median age, which is like 65 plus. It can be, we thought that it can be important. Yes, now, let's start from here. The D was the number of deaths over population. And when here we see this one is the globalization. And we can see that when the globalization increases from this regression line, baseline regression line, of course, we have to check with the estimates, but as a first picture, the number of deaths is a little bit increasing for more globalized countries. Now we can estimations. This one is the infection rate, and which is clearly can be seen here. If the globalization increases, the infection rates also increases. Therefore, at the beginning of the pandemics, the discussions about that more globalized countries could get the disease or could be hit by the disease more severely seems true. Therefore, a more globalized country is more vulnerable to pandemics. And here, transmission speed, of course, the first case is important. And as you may remember, we defined the transmission speed was the difference between the first case from Wuhan and the first case from a specific country. Therefore, inter-country transmission is also affected by globalization from this baseline. We can see from this baseline graph. When the globalization increase, you see the disease in your country quickly, more quicker. Therefore, globalization has this kind of effect also when we check the baseline. But when we come to case fatality ratio, I should remind that this paper has been published in more closer to the beginning of the pandemic, which is in this summer. Therefore, when we completed this paper, but since there isn't any cure or vaccinations, there are still connection with the globalization and case fatality ratio. Therefore, you can see here that for the baseline, of course, we have to check the controls, and we will. But when you see the baseline here, you will see that more globalized countries has a smaller case fatality ratio, maybe which is due to more developed health systems or more developed health technology, or spending much more money for health, has a power to spend much more money to health. And now let's see the results of the estimates here, which we can see it. Yes. Now, here you see the baseline coefficient for globalization and the number of deaths, logarithm of the number of deaths. It's a log-log model, as I said, due to the nonlinear nature of the data, which we checked, and therefore we use the natural logarithms, which also gives better coefficients, which we can interpret. As you see, there is a strong negative relationship between the number of deaths and globalization, which means when the globalization increases, this D is day gap, which means when you see the first jump into your countries. Therefore, when we see the day gap, we can say that when the globalization increased, you get the first case quicker from the source country. And again, the baseline, which we see here for the cases in the population, when the globalization increases, here is a very powerful connection between globalization and the case numbers. So when the globalization increases, the case number increases in that country. If the globalization level high, that means you will have more cases. Again, I'll turn to this. If the globalization level high, you will get the diseases quickly, because this D is a day gap. And let's see the transmission speed, which is the multiplication of the cases in the population and the day gap, the jumping. Still we have positive correlation between these two variables. But when we see the the case fatality ratio as a regression line graph. The relationship is negative. That means when the globalization increases, you get smaller case fatality ratios. Now, let's continue with the controls. When we continue with the controls, we'll see temperature is negatively related to the day gap, first jumping of the disease. Interestingly, the first jump of the disease is not connected with the 65 plus share of the population or median age. It's not connected, doesn't seem connected with the age structure of the country, but the distance is important here. When the distance increases, you get the disease in a bigger time. The jump happened not quicker, not faster, but slower. Democracy in here is slightly connected. Therefore, I don't want to interpret this finding. Just you can see it's positive. And we have also some robustness checks, of course. As I mentioned, we have 3 globalization variables, and we can see the same structure for the other 2 variables also, which we can say that the estimation seems quite robust. Let's see the population. Now we start to see the effect of age of 65 plus share in the population here. And interestingly, after this paper, there are several papers show this, but 65 plus people is more vulnerable when they get the disease. They can die more easily. It's not that easy. So they have some immunization protection. Therefore, we see a negative relationship. The case numbers. Of course, when we come with the deaths, we will see here a really powerful positive relationship with the number of deaths, case fatality ratios. But when we come only the cases, we can say that they get the diseases a little bit harder, but when they get, they can affect it more severely. But the median age for the all age structure of the country is positively corrected, connected to the case in the population. And here, as we might expect, they should be positively connected, but no, they are negatively connected according to the nature of data. We'll see the similar pattern with the case in the population with the transmission speed, which we defined as the multiplication of the case for population multiplication day gap. Of course, you'll see the robustness checks with different globalization indices, and we'll see consistent results in here. Now, when we come to case fatality ratio, this is a completely different issue because, as you can see, the baseline estimates here. Here with the controls, first of all, the relationship turned to negative. That means more globalized countries have smaller case fatality ratios. Here you see the 65 plus population share effect on case fatality ratio, which is very clearly positive. Another thing with the median age, if you have a younger population, that means you'll get the smaller case fatality ratio. The distance we didn't check because the case fatality ratio is not cannot be connected with the distance. Actually, we checked it and it doesn't change anything, so we'll leave it. For the beginning of the pandemics, we find these findings. We checked all other things, other controls, and the results survive. So we have for 3 globalization indices, we can say that we also have a robust result for case fatality ratio and the globalization level relationship in here. Therefore, if we summarize the findings, we can say that the globalization is affecting with several aspects of the pandemic. First of all, the more globalized country get the disease quicker. And we can guess that this can be due to international trade, this can be due to international tourism, international students. It can spread with several ways. But if you're a very close country, which is not have a complicated relationship with other countries, then you'll get the disease not in a short time. Diseases you get over and over, probably. That's why the case numbers overpopulation is also positively connected with the globalization. Therefore, you can say that the spike of the illnesses, spreading of the illnesses and the case numbers will be severe if you are a more globalized country. With combination of these two variable, again, transmission speed gives the same results. The globalized countries are more vulnerable. But I should focus on this aspect also. You get the diseases easier if you are a globalized countries, but you have fighting power because your case fatality ratios is better than unglobalized countries. Again, I should talk about there isn't any vaccination data in here because there wasn't any vaccination when we completed with this study. Therefore, I believe that a further study would be really nice about vaccinations. When we check the vaccinations, we can figure out that the globalized countries as also the richer countries and the vaccinations would be effective to stop the spreading the disease and the cases and the case fatality ratios. Therefore, the globalized countries will be more advantageous at this thing. Not in the beginning of the pandemics, but when the pandemics is ongoing, the case fatality ratios and vaccinations will help the globalized countries. In any way, just because of this nature, everybody can observe, not this much scientifically, but can observe that globalization affected the spread of the pandemic. Therefore, the arguments against globalization uh, will be more powerful from now on. Psychologically, sociologically, the arguments will be more louder against globalization in here, which I can figure out, I can guess. And thank you very much. Now I can have the questions if we have any. And
All right. Yes, thank you very much for the pretty insightful presentation of your paper, actually, which published with a team of researchers from published in the journal World Economy. It's an important journal. Talking about this issue. So then
yes.
few issues here actually talking about globalization and how it impact the pandemic and other variables that included in the regression function. Actually, that's the reason behind of doing this lecture, actually, to give an insight for especially for the students here to know how this thing actually impacted or how globalization brings another perspective impact towards the pandemic. So so I would open up if any of you here right now in this meeting or in this lecture right now, do you have any question? You can either put up in the chat box, or you might be able, if you want to ask it live, you can unmute yourself. You can ask Professor Gokhan question related to this this paper. Certainly, he have a few more research going on related also to this paper, as is mentioned just now, on democracy and several others, the impact towards the other sectors also. So any question from the floor, or any question from anyone? No? Then then Professor Gokhan should ask you question. The other way around. Should ask you the question. Right.
Yes.
So anyhow, just to maybe to keep the ball rolling, as guess the students are pretty much shy to ask. I mean, just now, there's one variable that you that the team, that you included in this regression, which is about the One Belt China, variable that you represented that as a belt countries. And it's found that I think in one of your, few of your regression actually are negative and significant. So how does that bring a picture towards this indication? Of these belt countries involved in that. There's this part is negative and significant in this sense. So maybe you can explain a little bit on that.
Yes, that was a really interesting finding, which we discussed just a little about it in the paper, because this wasn't the thing which we expected. But we could say that this belt country is not full scale now. It's just started with some agreements and with some road and railroad constructions, but we didn't see the full effects of international trade and everything on it. But of course, it's really hard to explain the negative relationship, as you said, which we cannot say too much things on it. Just present the results which data gave us, and some further researchers maybe can enlighten this question.
All right, that's a good one. Maybe, yeah, perhaps, you know, okay. Thank you for the answer. So I saw a hand raised just now. Do you have any question that you want to ask? What's that just now? Razif, is it? You have any question for Professor Gokhan here? Any question?
Sir.
Yes.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So hi, Professor. My name is Amani. I'm currently studying international economics. I was just curious because since you studied about globalization and how you talked about how you said more globalized countries are like more vulnerable to pandemics. But like recently, I've been reading about globalization and how globalization itself is like changing from just being trade to like becoming more about how to say royalties and licensing. So would you comment on that, or if you have any thoughts on that?
You read a paper about globalization is decreasing. What kind of result?
It's how it's not really decreasing, but kind of like changing.
Yes, yes, there are too many arguments about the globalization, but we can say that we didn't realize, but now we can realize it. But at the end of 1990s, the globalization made its peak, and now it starts to a little bit decreasing, especially after the mortgage crisis at the end of 2000s, at that decade, hit the globalization issue a little bit more. Therefore, we know that during last decades, it gives us that a little thoughts about that there could be some trade wars and these kind of things, and the migration problem started to be addressed more severely. And first of all, we started to hear a lot of arguments about globalization. Therefore, yes, you're right. The nature of globalization is changing. It's not at its peak like at the end of 1990s. Everybody was thinking that globalization is a perfect thing in the 1990s. But now there are really several arguments against it. Of course, not only about the globalization, but about individualism, about liberal trade, about the importance of democracy. All these liberal values are on the discussion now. And that discussion will affect, of course, the 21st century. And it's not only a discussion about the conflict of powers or economics, it's also a philosophical issue. Therefore, people are talking about why should we get democracy? Because as you may maybe follow from from Fukuyama's discussion on political science, says that his famous book, The End of History, the democracy plus liberty that humans can't get, but China and changed the discussions, and they say that okay, more hands-on countries, governments which act quickly can get better results. But we are in the beginning of the discussion. Now we'll see the results. There are some against arguments, like the head of Department of Economics, Daron Acemoğlu, MIT Economics Department head, for example, claiming that if you don't have a democracy or a global economy, eventually your economy will stop. You cannot be rich like Norway or something. It's impossible. For their papers are claiming that. Of course, this discussion is new. Therefore, the globalization and the other kind of liberal values will be on discussion in next 20 years, and we'll see the result. Yes, that's it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question, Amani, and thank you for the response, Gokhan. All right. So, any more question? Maybe we can take one more last question before we ended up this session. Any last question from for Professor Gokhan here from Istanbul University? It's we are far away here. So with this technological, I would call this technological types of globalization. In that sense, we have been able to be connected in this particular moment of time, right? So yes, I saw a hand raised. Yes, you can ask question, Akmal, if you want. Please proceed with the question. No?
Hello, Professor. Could you hear me?
Yes.
My name Muhammad Akmal bin Azhar. I want to ask about with the found of the vaccine for the COVID-19, what is your expectation about this globalization for the end of the year? Thank you.
Globalization, I think, will, if I understand correctly, the globalization will still affecting the pandemics, but now the vaccinations in here recently, and we can see that more globalized and more rich countries get the vaccines more. Therefore, it can affect the results. So a follow-up study can show us the actual final effect of the pandemic. But intuitionally, we would expect that results will remain, but maybe we can see more powerful effects on case fatality ratio, and the cases for population can change because of the vaccinations. When the vaccination starts to work, that connection we can lose that connection, but and the day gap, first jump of the disease will survive because it's about the data of the beginning of again will become powerful, but cases in population can change because of the vaccinations. This will be the change in the results which we can expect if I answered enough. I don't know, but that's it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the the answer and question from Akmal actually. Right, so let me get through this.
Yes.
I think we will, because the time are quite limited now. We are near 4, so I guess before we ended up this particular session in this evening, the important evening here, with the guest lecture from Professor Gokhan from Istanbul University. Let us maybe if we could stop this screen sharing for a while, Gokhan, we can take a nice photo in our way, in a new normal.
Sorry.
No problem. All right, so we have about 9 pages of participants here. The total up supposedly just now was about 200. Then numbers of them keep coming in and keep coming out because of the internet connection. Right, so okay, let us maybe on your camera, let us take a kind of a photo for all of us, and then for each of the page, and then after that I will share this thing also with all of you. Right, smile, just keep smiling, and then we will I will keep on doing this. All right, page number 1, we have page number 2 there. Right, you have page number 3. Okay, those of you with camera, please on your camera, please. All right, please do on your camera for this moment, important moment. Okay, let me see those of you with faces. All right, I've done taking a picture actually on the first part of this particular lecture. So again, we are grateful that you're here. We are honored that you are here this evening. Gokhan here in Malaysia, and morning in Istanbul. And I think yes, for appreciation, everyone, everyone who have on the camera, please also clap a hand with me to thanks Professor Gokhan for his lecture. Come, let's do this. This is how we can do it, or we do it virtually, types of reaction, types of clapping hand. Right. Thank you very much for Prof. Gokhan, and then I think we are very grateful again, and I hope to see you in the future in the next event. So anything from you?
Yes. Sure. I would like to thank you for inviting me, and I would like to thank all the participants and students who asked questions. Thank you very much. It was a very happy event for me.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. So I think we can end up this session, and then take care, everyone. Stay safe. Remember social distancing and physical distancing. And we are still in the pandemic era, so stay safe wherever we are. And one day in the future, perhaps we can travel here, or or go to your university so that we can really meet. Just to let everyone knows that me and Professor Gokhan, we never really meet face to face. This is how we meet online as of now in this era of pandemic. So when this is over, hopefully we can meet somewhere in this part of the world, and not in Malaysia, maybe in Turkey. So thank you very much again, and I'll see all of you. Take care. Goodbye, all of you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all of you, for the student, I will share back.
Thank you.
Share back the QR just in case some of you do not managed to do it just a moment ago. So I'll share back this the QR with you so that you can sign in yourself rather than I do it manually. Right, I know there's a lot of manual attendance there because this is pretty much interesting for today. Right? So the QR is up. So those of you who need to do this, who still need to do this, please do so. If not, you can just put up this manual. So sorry for the line. The line is not good here in the faculty right now because of the raining. But thank God this was quite well managed. Okay, so you can I'll see all of you. Those of you having a class tomorrow, the class is still on for tomorrow. This is just an extra thing on top of what you are doing here.